Some of you have probably already met David Simon, because he is a member. He just joined us last October. And David is a recently retired lawyer. We'll forgive him for that. So Richard has been taking photos of wildlife most of his life. He got his first SLR for his 15th birthday and started seriously taking photos then. And since then, he's taken many trips. He's been to Tanzania, Vietnam, India, the Galapagos, parts of Ecuador, Pantanal in Brazil, the Ecuadorian Andes and the coast, and most recently Uganda, which is the topic of tonight's presentation. I didn't know much about Uganda. The thing that David earlier, Uganda to me, I didn't realize that they have wonderful national parks and things, but they do. And so some of the key species that he's going to talk about tonight are rhinos, yes, and gorillas. So I'll turn it over to David. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, I haven't been in Africa for 10 years. I was there, Tanzania for my 60th. And I decided it was time to go back. So looked into various places, and Uganda seemed like the place to go to for the various wildlife. I do a lot of nature photography, and I jokingly say that when I get on a boat with my camera, I tell the people to save my camera if the boat starts sinking and let me drown. So Uganda is called the Pearl of the Orient. Got the name, I think it was Winston Churchill was there back in the 20s, and he said, oh, it's the Pearl of the Orient of Africa. That's how it got its name. So I'm going to give you a little background on just the country itself. Now, this is a map of Africa, and Uganda is here. That's the blue part is Lake Victoria, which is the second largest lake in the world. What's the biggest lake in the world? Here. Exactly. So Uganda is here. Can't read it, but yeah. And so it borders all the African wildlife and everything like that. It's a country that is 247,000 square kilometers. BC is just over 900,000. So we can stick Uganda in BC and have 3/4 of BC left over. That's how small it is. It's roughly 400 miles or 400 kilometers from one end to the other. And it's got lots of national parks. The capital city is Kampala here. The airport is in Entebbe. Everybody knows where Entebbe is, based from back in the 70s. And there's parks here, and there's Murchison Falls National Park up here, which is a very big park. And there's a waterfall there, which has got the highest density of water over the falls per second, 300 cubic meters per second. And the falls is only about 40 feet wide. And it flows from the river into the lake. So basically most tours go this way and then down to here and then come back to Kampala. The tour I took, I went from Kampala to Ziwa, where the rhinos are, which is roughly about here. And then I went up to Murchison Falls and then along here and then to Kibale National Park, which I can't see very well here on the map there, where the chimpanzees are. And then you go down to Bwindi Impenetrable Forest National Park, where the gorillas are. There's also a lot of gorillas in this park, which my eyes is terrible. It's the Uganda Gorilla National Park. And that borders Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And that is a bit of a dangerous park to be in, especially with the Democratic Republic of Congo at this point. So I landed in Entebbe. Driver picked me up. We went to Ziwa, and it's roughly over here. It doesn't show on the map. And in Ziwa, so the official language of population is just under 50 million people in Uganda. Official language is English. That's what they teach in schools. There's a lot of native languages that are spoken by the various tribes. And Swahili, which is a foreign language and is viewed as being neutral, is basically the unofficial second language of Uganda. And a lot of people speak Swahili in addition to English. Just to get an idea of the economy, it's a poor country. There's some areas that are better off than others. They've discovered oil recently there, so there's a lot of oil development going on in certain areas. Just to give you an idea how poor it is, the worldwide domestic product in 2022 is at about $12,703 per person. The GDP in Uganda, on the other hand, reached just under roughly $964 per capita. According to what I found on the web, it was ranked at 94th of the major economies of the world. So sort of in the middle. Other websites say it's poorer than that. Okay, so Ziwa is a private ranch that was established in 1983 as a cattle farm, which introduced exotic cattle into Uganda. Privately owned by Captain Roy and his family. It operated as a cattle farm for almost 20 years. And in 2002, the family engaged in lengthy discussions with the Rhino Fund's executive director. Following this, the decision was made to relocate 7,000 heads of cattle in order to establish a safe haven for rhinos. At the time, rhinos had become extinct in Uganda due to poaching. And so family donated the land, started raising money, and put together this rhino sanctuary. And I think it's about 60 square kilometers. It's fenced off. And there are people who work with the rhinos constantly. They're with them all the time. And there is also round-the-clock armed security guards with the rhinos. When I was on, you'll see the pictures, but I didn't show the pictures of the guards. But behind us, there were a couple of guys, young armed guards with AK-47 rifles. And they basically stay with the rhinos 24/7. The guy was telling us that the market price for rhino horns is $45,000 a kilo.
Oh.
The Chinese love it because supposedly it's a big aphrodisiac, and also some people believe it cures cancer. Market price has gone down a bit because the guy said at one point it was 65,000 a kilo. So there's two subspecies of white rhinoceroses, the southern white ones and the northern white ones. They estimate that the population of the southern is around 20,400, and the northern species is basically critically endangered, and there's supposedly only 2 known captive females of that one. There's no conclusive explanation for the name white rhinoceros. As you'll see in the pictures, it's basically a gray rhinoceros. Popular idea is that white is a distortion of either the Afrikaans word weed or Dutch word weegie. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. Meaning wide and referring to the rhino's square lips. The white rhino has an immense body and a large head, short neck and broad chest. Females weigh 1,600 kilograms and males weigh 2,400 kilograms. Head and body length is 3.5 to 4.6 meters. It is roughly 11 to 15 feet. Now, when I was you'll see in the pictures, when I was there, we were in this big field. And we walked in looking for the rhinos. We found 4 of them. I was no further away from the rhinos than that table over there, right? And I was shooting. Sorry, I was shooting with a 200 to 400 millimeter lens, and I had it at 200, and I was backing up a lot so that I could get them into the frame. So So this is, I think this was a male. It was just sleeping in the bushes. And you can see there's one of the horns and there's the second horn. There's two. And I was about 50 feet away from these things. They're big. And does anybody see any white on this? So what they do is they eat grasses. And the guide was telling us that they only eat the short grasses because their heads are so high that they can't raise their heads to eat these taller grasses. So you can see they're all down here and they're just walking and they're eating the grasses. So it gives you a closer view of the thing. The mouth, you know, one horn, this is the bigger horn. And their eyes, they have very poor eyesight. And their eyes are on each side of their head. So it's very hard for them to see things. Because they're not like us, you know, where our eyes are in the front, are both in the front. So we get a sort of a double vision or a depth. The rhinos don't have that. And just to give you an idea of the size of the posterior view of the rhino. And what they do is when there's mud or if it's wet, they go down onto the ground and rub themselves with the mud to help them cool down. So these were three of the rhinos that were just walking slowly and eating. There's another close-up view of the animal eating, you know, the small eyes. And you see this, anybody, how many people have been to Africa before? So you've all seen it, you know, the big animals have birds on top of them. The birds are, you know, eating the bugs off of the animals. So in this case, this is a cattle egret. And it was just hanging out with the rhinos. Okay, so that was just a few of the pictures that I took of the rhinos. There was one other thing. Yeah, as I said, the park is a private park. They started out with 2 rhinos. One of them they got from, I think, possibly Kenya, and another one from another one, and they've gradually multiplied and gotten other ones in. And right now there's roughly 42 of them. And I think the plan is ultimately to repopulate some of them into other areas where they've gone extinct. Anybody have any questions? Okay, so we're going to move on to chimpanzees. The main park for chimpanzees is called Kibale National Park. It's in the southwestern part of the country. They estimate it has about 1,000 chimpanzees divided into at least a dozen different communities, 4 of which are habituated to humans. And what the park has done is they have a program to habituate the chimpanzees to humans. So if you want to pay extra over and above your regular fee, you can hang out with a group of chimpanzees, like hanging out in this room. Now, I didn't do that, and I sort of found out about it afterwards. But the admission fee for the park, if you're just going to see the chimpanzees, is $225 US. And what you do is you have to get a guide. They have trackers in the park itself, and the trackers are always reporting back to the tour guides to say, okay, the animals are in this area or that area, and you walk. But they're not necessarily there, even when they say that, because they move around a lot, the chimpanzees. They're very, very active, and they move around a lot. They're considered great apes scientifically, and included with other great apes are the bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, and humans. Chimpanzees and humans share approximately 95% of their DNA, and chimpanzees are more closely related to humans than they are to gorillas. They can live up to 45 years in the wild and up to 60 years in captivity. They're mainly frugivores, which means their main staple food is fruit. They also eat leaves, nuts, seeds, birds, eggs, and insects. And some groups of chimpanzees hunt and eat colobus monkeys and other small mammals. And they did, Jane Goodall, Dr. Jane Goodall, the naturalist, back in the 60s, discovered that all chimpanzees actually know how to use things for tools. And they use blades of grass to extract termites from a termite mound. And they've also been observed using stones to crack open nuts and using sticks to extract honey from beehives. The chimpanzees, it was very hard to find these things. We had a guide and we were walking through the forest, hot, humid, steep hills. And, you know, you're told where they are, or the guides are told where, and you have to walk to the area and you hope that you'll see them. And if you see them, you hope that they're visible. So they live in fission-fusion societies, large communities of up to a few hundred chimpanzees, with smaller groups will break off from the community temporarily. And they communicate using gestures, facial expressions, and vocalizations. They show affection for one another by embracing, touching hands, and even kissing. And they can laugh when they play. So they didn't always cooperate in terms of taking pictures of them. You had to sort of wait, and like anybody who's done nature photography know that you take hundreds of pictures to get one good one. This was up in a tree, probably 150 feet away from me. And, you know, I was lucky to get this one. This one was walking, it was up in the tree and started walking around the branches. And this is not like close to the ground. This is like 50, 60, 80 feet up. So it's quite amazing that they're able to do this and not fall down. Just sitting up in the crook of a tree. Just sitting up there and eating leaves and checking out its manicure. Oh, I love this one. This was about 50 feet up in a tree, and it's just, there's the head, and it's, its arms behind its head, and it's just lounging.
Yeah. Were they curious about you guys?
No, these were pretty wild. They were hard to see. They stayed away. They stayed way up in the trees. Sometimes they would come down onto the ground and they would just take off. The gorillas, you'll see the pictures of the gorillas. I'm a lot closer to the gorillas. And the tribes that they've habituated, I'm sure you basically get up close and shake their hands, but not these. It was a little disappointing, to be honest, the trip, because my guide just didn't seem to be able to get me to them at the right times. We always seem to show up after a group had just left because the chimpanzees were moving along. I still got some good shots. So this one was about 40 feet in front of me and maybe about 20 feet above ground, and it was just in this tree, and it was just giving me the look. There's a better shot of it. And it's interesting because there's supposedly 10 or 12 other apes, monkeys, types of monkeys in the forest, and the only ones I saw were chimpanzees. Well, this one, yeah, was coming down. Well, this one, yeah, was coming down. Yeah. Yeah.
They break into subgroups? Because they primarily stay.
I'm gonna speculate based on what.
I'm gonna speculate because based on what my guy told us about the gorillas. And that is,
Males and the females age.
you know, as the males and the females age from being babies, they get,
Mate.
you know,
And so
time to mate.
you're
And so, you know,
gorillas, and I'm sure it's the same.
what they told us about the gorillas, and I'm sure it's the same thing with chimpanzees, is the chimpanzees are not incestuous,
So they form,
nor are the gorillas.
they get
So
old,
they form these other groups as they get older
soon.
to find suitable mates and raise families.
Okay, so
Okay, so mountain gorillas.
the silver
The mountain gorilla is a 400 plus pound massive muscles built through a daily diet of about 40 pounds of leaves, stems, shoots, and fruit.
most
Most species of gorillas, the western and eastern, play an essential role in maintaining
disperse seed to create small clearings in foliage, forage, allowing water to find sweet sunlight.
foliage as they forage, allowing a wide variety of gorilla, which is which I saw. Often thicker and longer than that of other gorilla species, enables them to live in colder temperatures. They can be identified by nose prints unique to each individual. Now, when I went to the park,
There was
there was orientation at the park by some of the park officials, and there were enough people. They divided us up into 5 separate groups. There was a whole bunch of people, and I think there was about 30 or 35 people total there going to see gorillas. They divided us up into 5 different groups, and each group was assigned one family of gorillas, and they actually showed us pictures of the families, that we were going to see. And then at the end of the trip, they gave us a little certificate saying that, we successfully passed the gorilla trekking thing, and the name of the gorilla group that I saw. It was very well organized, and I should hope so, because the entrance fee for the gorilla park is $750 US.
So what they factors out there, and they know various
have is they have factors out there, and they know roughly where the various are. See, I can't remember the name of the group. So I went with the group, and we drove about half an hour to get to this area where we get into the forest near where the gorillas were.
And then we
started walking, and the guides were getting back from the trackers saying, "Oh, you're getting closer. This is where they are." And then we came to a clearing, and they said, "Okay, they're just on the other side of these trees." And then we went in to see them. So a little more detail about the gorilla. It's primarily terrestrial and quadrupedal, meaning it walks on all 4 of its limbs. It'll climb into fruiting trees if the branches can carry its weight. Like all great apes other than humans, its arms are longer than its legs. It moves by knuckle walking, supporting the weight on the backs of its curved fingers rather than its palms.
Spends most of it eating as
large
quantity of foods are needed to sustain its massive
quantity of foods are needed to sustain its massive bulk. Forages in the early morning, rests during the late morning and around midday, and in the afternoon forages again before resting at night.
Vegetation to sleep in.
Each gorilla builds a nest from surrounding vegetation to sleep in, construct the forest to find food. Only infants sleep in the same nest as their mothers, and they wake up around 6 in the morning, except when it's cold and overcast. And hold on a second.
So this was
the male.
I was
about 10 feet away from that.
He was big.
He was big.
And he was. It was
a little nerve-wracking. I've never been
that close
to a wild animal like this.
That's the male silver.
That's the male silverback. And at one point, I don't know, something spooked him. And I was probably, that table over there.
There was,
about the distance I was from these
and
things.
he was just sitting there
And he was just sitting there,
got spooked.
some leaves and whatnot. And at one point he got spooked
He was
and he
big.
started making noise and he got up and he was big.
He
He was
started
about
running
that high.
bush.
And he started running through the bush, sort of diagonal to where we were. And our guide started making sort of gorilla sounds to sort of try and, I don't know, communicate with him to keep him, calm him down or something. But he was big. Needs some dental work, but I don't know what he was doing, but I mean, look at the size of that hand.
How old was the estimated?
I'm
I'm guessing this one was probably around 20 years old, because this is the male. And as the guy was saying, there were about 10 gorillas total in this group. Several females with babies, and you'll see them shortly.
Younger,
And then
children gorillas,
younger children,
a little older than, say, 3-4 years older.
not even, but bigger, a little older than, say, 3-4 years old or something.
Secondary male.
And what the guides were saying is generally the family stay there of the main male. But when the males and the females start getting bigger and starting to reach sexual maturity,
They will because
move out of the
the
group,
male gorillas will not mate with their children.
because the male gorillas will not mate
Their own little,
with their children.
might be
It might be an asexual group of males until they find, other females to join and form their own groups. So did that change? Oh, yeah.
There's
Just another shot of that same male. And then there's the male.
So
it was amazing. He was taking a piece of bamboo and eating it. I mean, how much nutrition he's getting out of a piece of bamboo, I don't know, but
that's
that's what they eat, and leaves. So this was them walking. You can see the size of this thing.
So
this was a female
with a
baby. And this was an older baby. I think the baby was around 6 to 8 months old. They're just sitting in the amongst the bushes, eating and just resting. There the baby is nursing.
Obviously, very used to human.
Yeah. Now, the thing about, sorry, I forgot to mention, you pay $750.
Yeah. Now, the thing about,
You hook up.
I forgot to mention, you pay $750 US to go into this park. Once you hook up with the gorillas, you've got 1 hour. And then you're out. And they enforce that.
My group
So you
was,
gotta get your money's worth. My group was, there was either 6 or 8 of us. And I said there were 4 other groups that went out to different areas to see them.
but
But
I
I
think,
think they can do up to 10 groups,
depending on
depending on how busy it is.
and
I'm not sure if they do it just once a day or twice a day.
but
But you could conceivably, it's probably once a day, because
we lucked
we
out,
lucked out. We were able to
meet
meet the gorillas
about a half.
within about a half an hour of starting our trek. But they
Factor in.
the park says factor in hours,
And we get to
for
one.
the trek. And then you get your 1 hour, and then you have to trek out of it.
Was this a converted compound as well, or?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, there were, when we went into the park, we had an armed guard with us. And they keep track. They have people who stay in the forest pretty well round the clock to keep an eye on the animals and watch them.
Are they being poached as bad as the rhino?
Sorry?
Are they being poached as much as the rhino?
No.
There's
But
still,
there is there is still potential for poaching, especially in the other park, which is close to Rwanda and the Democratic Republic. There's more armed guards in there, and you're actually told not to go in there without a guide. That's an armed guard.
Parks for a long time. During the rainy season.
I think they're open all year round.
I
I
mean,
mean, I don't know how many people show up for the rainy season, but they're using the money for research and they're using the money for the staffing. So, 750 a pop,
they
they
want,
want the revenue.
so
So
this
this was, I think that was the original female carrying its baby, walking through the bush.
Are there any chimps in that area, or are they pretty exclusive?
Well, I didn't see any chimps, and they didn't really
mention it.
There might be in the forest, but this particular forest is noted for its gorillas,
And
and it's more mountainous than Kibale is.
and
And
then,
the reality is that the gorillas are very territorial, and they're a lot bigger than the chimps.
interact with them.
Chimps are going to interact with them.
So there's that mother
So
again.
there's that mother again with the infant, and this one was only about, I think, 3 or 4 months old. This particular infant.
So
So
they're
there, you can see it's eating the bamboo shoot.
and
And
they're
there were a bunch of them together, more juveniles, and they were just sort of lounging around like a playground. And what our guide was doing, they were sitting, they were sitting in these bushes, and what the guides were doing, or a couple of the guides were doing, is they were pulling down the, as you can see this here.
This
This
one,
wasn't from the chimpanzees. The guides, not from the chimpanzees, the gorillas. The guides were pulling it down so that we could see the gorillas better.
but
We were literally, as
far
far
as-
as I am from you guys.
it's pretty.
Pretty cool.
Do those acknowledge you being there?
They're aware. They're very aware. They're very aware.
But
But
they're,
they're used to people. As long as you stay out of their way and don't bother them, they're not going to. They're not going to bother you.
Does it help the population?
Sorry?
Has it helped the population? It's.
No.
Same.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because it's illuminated, it gives them an enclosed
Oh
area.
yeah, definitely. Because it's eliminated. It
So
gives
like
them an area.
approaching on,
Keeps
plus,
civilization from encroaching on the area. Plus, it's keeping the poachers out.
yeah, they're just,
But yeah, they're just, wasn't a clearing. It was sort of cleared by the gorillas and by a guide, and they were just lounging around.
having a little
Any
discussion.
little question?
Oh, well,
Oh, well, sorry.
there's, there's a couple of videos at the end of this.
There's a couple of videos at the end of the thing, which I can't seem to